pretty close. We're probably right around,
Okay. I will call the Wednesday, October 9th, 2024 meeting of the Monona Park and Rec Board to order. We have 6 of the members here. Is there a motion we have the minutes for both August 14th and September 11th? Is there a motion to approve either or both of those sets of minutes? Motion to approve. Let's vote. Is there a second? Second. Any changes? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. We don't have any appearances on tonight, anything not on the agenda. There's no, right? There's nobody out in, or we're not on.
We are on Zoom,
Yeah.
but yeah, no one's trying to get in.
No unfinished business, new business 5A, Huska Veterans Memorial Acceptance. And then just, Steve Halverson is here. I'm not sure what the exact name of the organization is, but, yeah, but. And Steve's obviously a very long time, lifetime with us, right? So. Yeah, did you want to introduce it yet? or you want-
No, let's Steve kick it off, because this facility predates my time. It's old. And Steve has all the institutional history and knowledge and kind of talk through.
Thank you. Yeah, Steve Halverson, been in town 35 years, which is still known as the new guy up until recently. Monona, just to fill you in on some history here, Monona Grove Businessmen was a group that was started back in 1958. It was a bunch of kind of the pillars of the community of Monona at that time. It predated the chamber, and they wanted something to promote business on Monona Drive, and as the city was growing, Phil Croak was a member, Bob Gunderson, a lot of names that you know in Monona history. Since our beginning in 1958, we donated a little over $800,000 to scholarships and welcome to Monona sign and a whole bunch of things around here, defibrillators, things like that. When the city took over what is now Ahuska Park, Mayor Tom Metcalf at the time said, "Hey, what should we put in the park?" And our group said, "Well, we think a Veterans Monument would be perfect to go in there." And so he said, "Okay, let's start working on that." And so I'm going to hold this up to show you what we built. That was back in 2005 when we got started. And this, of course, is the result of that. It's the largest granite star in the world. The 7 columns up here list everyone from Dane County that was killed in action, going back to and including World War I. We tried to go back farther than that, but they didn't have adequate records going back to the Civil War and whatnot. Then on the walls are veterans bricks that people can purchase either for themselves or in memory of a veteran or someone who's currently serving, but they have to be veterans on there. And so back in 2005, came before this board and we got unanimous approval for it. Then we went to the Plan Commission, ran into some difficulties there. And that's kind of brings us why it's taken so long for us in the city to get together on donating this officially to the city. And so this is step 1 of the process, to talk with all of you folks, then to go before the Plan Commission and then ultimately City Council. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. And again, last time in 2005, we got unanimous consent from the Parks Board. So I wanted to thank all of you for, even though most of you weren't here then, but the Parks Board in general for working with us in such an effective manner there. And so I'm not sure if you need a motion or just what the formality is.
I was gonna ask, so that what we're looking at doing is they're going to donate the memorial to the city, right?
Yeah, so the original agreement that was drafted had basically like a 10-year clause on things, volunteer hours, maintaining. Any repairs that needed to be done, flags. And after that 10 years, which would have been 2015, there was some challenges, I think, with things that needed to get upgraded or fixed and just priorities of the city at that point, the multiple administrators that it went through, legal language. And so the original agreement has some stipulations in there. And I think the last that we had talked, looking back through my emails, because I just wanted to double check, was like in 2013, and there was some work done on the glazing and the concrete. And that had been fixed, and then there was some caulking on the granite star, so we had identified some issues that needed repaired before we were willing to accept it back to the city. And all of those conditions that I had recommended to the mayor and the council at that point have been fulfilled by the organization. And so that's where we're at here today. And so in your packet, you would have the original agreement, and then listed some of the stipulations, at least from a parks board perspective or parks perspective. I'm comfortable where we're at. We probably should have had this sooner, it's been like 8-9 years after what we originally were, but like with anything that gets built, that has weather associated, there's some, issues, but I think all of those, the renovations, and now they've been done for, I think the concrete work has been done for over a year or more. And we have, I think I'm acceptable, and I think from your perspective too, I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah, what we had discovered was with the granite bricks, they're surrounded by concrete. Well, they were put in with a really hard caulk type substance. And we found that the granite expands and contracts at a different rate than concrete. And so that caused a number of cracking in the bricks themselves. And so when we refurbished it, we had them pull all of the bricks out, redo them, put them all back in with a more malleable caulking system there. Also go through and seal off any cracks that had appeared in the walls of the monument, and then went through and completely recalled the star. And so that's what the city wanted prior to us turning it over, so.
Steve, what type of annual maintenance does your group do to that? Do you have to do polishing of the granite, or, you had talked about the sealing of the the caulks and adding, proper caulk, things like that in there. Is there an annual budget you have for the monument?
What our process has been is typically the Saturday right before Memorial Day, we'll get a number of the business members there along with the fire department, because they've got some pretty high pressure hoses, which we owe them a debt of gratitude for helping us with that. So we scrub the monument, get any leaves, debris out of there. Then, like with the stamped concrete, put a seal coating on that, and then replace the flags as well. And so we've been doing that ever since the monument was built, if I'm answering your question. Yeah.
And that would be the city's responsibility going forward.
Correct. We would still solicit, opportunities to volunteer for people to, contribute to that. I think there's probably still appetite for being able to do that, but the overall responsibility for repairs on the structure would be made. And I think and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, per our previous conversations, that your organization would still be interested in doing the names if anyone was still interested in adding to the existing. Or not. I can't remember what
You're right on target.
Yeah.
Because there's a number of bricks out there that don't have names on them. It's the bricks that we sell for the fundraiser.
Mhm.
And so after we get about 10 to 12 of those, Then we call the monuments guy, and he comes out and etches the names in there. Sometimes we have to wait a while, and I know you've gotten some calls unfortunately,
Right.
because it's quite a process to bring the trucks out there, his crews, he's got to set up. Sandblasting and stencils to put the new names in there. That's something we're gonna continue to do. The monument group is a 501c3. We work in conjunction with the Monona Grove businessmen to keep that going forward. And as long as we're gonna be a group and hopefully into perpetuity, every year go out and clean the monument and replace the flags and do all of that, so.
Okay, anything else?
No, the only thing, and that was a council was there's the. Amount of $2,000 that was supposed to be in a trust agency to the
Right.
city that would stay in that trust agency. For future repairs and. Maybe we're still having disagreement on that or discussion, but at least for my recommendation is to fulfill the original agreement and have that, you know, in what we call a trust agency, which is basically a specific account that can only be used for that purpose. So we have various trust agencies for fundraising donations that can only be used for those specified purposes. So I think that's something I'm recommending as a condition of approval. I think it'll probably follow that through council and then probably be a discussion at council level on whether they want to leave that requirement.
Okay, I mean, it is in the agreement.
Correct.
Yeah, we're okay with that as long as if there is a repair needed, that money can be accessed for this project.
Correct,
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not going to Jake's retirement fund.
Is that still in the Cayman Islands?
Yeah. Monroe.
Over the years, has there been vandalism to it?
A little bit, let me show you. Oh, you can't really see, but
Gonna ask the same thing. I remember.
right on the corners of the star, some of that has been chipped away. You have to get up there and you can see it, but you have to kind of be looking for it. We didn't think there would ever be any vandalism at all. Maybe I'm a little naive. We have been out there a number of times where there may have been a situation where there was vandalism and that didn't take place. I know that we went back and forth with the city quite a bit about, hey, what happens if it gets spray painted? And our response was, well, with polished granite, you take a razor blade and scrape it off. If the shelter gets spray painted, you guys have a lot bigger problem than we would. But to answer your question, just in the tips of a couple stars.
So why would anyone do that? Right, that's not great.
Oh, we've had a significant amount of vandalism in the park and at the shelter, but as far as graffiti and spray paint, that memorial has been, you know, thankfully, I would untouched for the most part, but yeah. But we, you know, so it's a good sign anyway that it's been spared, but yeah, it is, I don't want to say it's more vandal resistant, but it is, as you say, it's easier to remove than what we've had to deal with.
I think people are sensitive to the fact that it's a memorial and sometimes I gotta remind the kids of that, you know, like, they're running around and. You know,
Looks like a plaything to
Well,
little kids sometimes.
it's happened to me, yeah, it's.
Like
yeah,
a
it's a
spray
good
with the
reminder.
hose.
Yeah.
Off of it. No, just-
Yeah, it's a good reminder, it's why it's there.
Right.
Right.
Okay, then I think we're ready for a motion. Somebody want to move to accept the conveyance of the monument to the city.
Move to accept the conveyance of the monument to the city.
Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So good luck with planning commission. I didn't know you had such a new company.
Pardon?
I thought you'd been here your entire life. I didn't know you were such a new company.
Yeah, oh yeah,
35 years.
just 35 years. So.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I will leave and let you continue on with your meeting.
We can finally bring out the sandwiches and such.
Canapes.
When I leave, if I see a catering truck, I'm like. So, as with last time, thank you so much and appreciate it, and I am hoping for good luck with the planning commission.
Yeah.
So,
I'll do what I can.
Well, this one is on plan, so I get a little.
I can't imagine, well,
thanks.
you never know. I mean, what would anyone be opposed to, you know?
There was a lot of history to it way back when, so, and you know, there might be. One member, at least the plan commission is still willing to present.
Oh, yeah.
5B is discussion of 2025 budget reduction scenarios.
So in your packet, just what was presented to city council, on Monday. And this has been a discussion at a staff level for some time now on option B, I guess it would be, of the budget scenario in which we would be implementing the compensation plan for reduced wages, but would have to make cuts to service in order to balance the budget. And so these are sort of somewhat specific and somewhat general and the same on what we're talking about from a parks perspective. And I just wanted to kind of at least talk about where I'm at as far as, and some of these are potential changes that would be potentially implemented regardless of the outcome of the referendum due to staffing. So unfortunately, the question on the referendum does not address staffing issues that we have in our department that did not receive enough public support. So while the wage increases for our staff is great, the workload remains the same. And so I'm trying to figure out for all of my staff, how we can have better work-life balance. And that's gonna mean cuts to service really of what we all are used to and accustomed to now. So some of the things that we're looking at,
Jake, real quick, how
Oh,
many
yeah.
full-timers do you have?
we have 2 full-time parks employees.
2 full-time parks employees.
Yep, and we
Oh.
have 4. We have a total of 8 full-time staff, but 3 of them are directly related to the out of school time program, the after
Okay.
school, summer camp. And then there's Missy, Jessica, myself, and 2 full-time parks employees.
Okay,
So one of the scenarios is a reduction of our seasonal parks wages, which are about $80,000 to $40,000. So if we cut those wages in half, they're getting half the amount of hours available to do park maintenance. That will basically eliminate a lot of what we can do, especially on weekends. That would be reducing the amount of mowing that we can do in parks and consider mowing only revenue producing areas. So those parks that have athletic events that are doing revenue, shelter rentals, which would also be impacted by this. We would be eliminating trash cans and looking at a policy of a pack in with a pack out. Right now, I would say the biggest time suck of our parks is emptying trash that is predominantly dog waste. And so we will be implementing that in the off season this fall and reducing the amount of cans that we have outside of the facility. The amount of recycling cans that we have and have provided is also, we have well over 100 trash and recycling cans in the city. So just to do checks on those can be 3 to 4 hours. And the dog waste really is what is a big driver of having to empty things well before we need to. And so that would be on the table, so to speak, of what we would be implementing. The ability to either, we have unsuccessfully been able to continue to recruit seasonal staff for working weekends only. And so we have been paying overtime for whether it's full-time staff or our longer term seasonals to come in on the weekends, or it's been myself. I've tracked the amount of weekends that I've worked since March, and it's too much. It's for me and for everyone. So between managing the ice rink, and managing the outdoor pool, and being on call for revenue producing activities, We would be reducing or eliminating the number of shelter rentals available on Sundays specifically, so we would only allow or have Saturday rental options. And then those wastes would be done. In order to maintain that budget and reduce that amount of hours. The porta potties, portable restrooms would all be eliminated in this scenario. We currently have some year-round or standing portable restrooms. There would be a reduction in the number of special events that we would be able to provide. The setup and takedown, for example, this week, you know, our staff is completely dedicated to setting up the fall festival, and that's with having 3 additional seasonals, which we don't always have at this time of year, plus our 2 full-time people, and that bumps into kind of shelter shutdown. We see Madison's already shut down the majority of their park restroom facilities. We keep ours open as long as we possibly can before we have to kind of transition and get ready to set up the ice rink. This would be potentially closing a restroom facility and not having it be open. And there are a couple that would come to mind that would be limited impact to the overall community for what we have. So those are some of the things right off the top. The winter maintenance of our park sidewalks would be reduced or eliminated, so no snow removal on the paths. Again, focusing on a revenue producing facilities, which would be, we are responsible for Ewood School. For snow removal and access into that facility, and the ice rink, which is a revenue producing facility. Those would be the 2 priorities. And so those are realistically what we're looking at right off the bat from the reduction of staff. Our ability to maintain at the level that we have now is just not there. And if we're talking about kind of a draconian measure to reduce costs in order to implement a compensation plan. So there would be cuts. We've talked about what the outdoor pool hours would look like. And that one's a little challenging because the pool is a revenue producing facility. So we could have closures of it, but then that would be loss of revenue, so to speak.
Nona Grove pays to use the pool, right? The school district.
Correct. Any group that,
Do you know how much? Just curious.
I don't know off the top of my head, they use it very sparingly at the end of the season for,
But they do pay us.
correct, yes. The pool hours could be reduced, but again, it really would just be looking at, in significant increase from what we approved in the budget for fees in order to be able to, have it staffed appropriately and have access to it. The only way reducing or eliminating the pool financially makes sense if we're talking about a full-time staff elimination in the department. And that's not something I would be advocating for, or be shifting responsibilities from a full-time perspective from the outdoor pool to other areas that we operate.
So, Jake, when I looked at the operating budget, like maybe it looked like if we completely closed the pool, we would probably save about 15-ish, $15,000 to $20,000. I mean, I know we're still paying you.
Right.
Paying the seat and all, but
I-
but we wouldn't be paying any of the lifeguards.
Correct.
We also lose all the revenue, but a lot of the bills would be lower, much lower. So that was.
It maybe, then that's kind of giving like base electrical that we would have for security lights and whether or not we, you know, like we have a heater, electric heater in the pump room to keep the pump room at a certain level, so the pumps don't seize up. So if it was a 1-year deal versus just complete mothball,
Right.
there's still a level of, you know,
Sure.
expense that we would have in
Right.
just the building. But yeah, it to me, it's not a budget solver in the closure of the pool unless we're talking about elimination of, you know, full-time staff positions. And even in that case, we technically still could have, you know, like if Missy was in charge of the after-school and summer camp program, we could have a seasonal pool manager. It's not gonna be as good and maybe not be as safe, but we could still technically run, you know, the pool.
Right.
And continue to kind of break even, which has been relatively outside staff, full-time staff wages and benefits. So the outdoor pools, a break even revenue expenditures. Now, you never know what happens, like we're one big pipe crack away from being in the $500,000 repair,
Right.
you know, in the basin, but that's just the gamble that we take every year. But really what we're talking about is loss of service. The other thing that we would be looking at is some of our service contracts and parks. So we would still be putting in our piers for boat launches, but we would not be putting in the pier at Schluter or Wild Haven. That would be a $2,000 savings. So there's like little things that would add up that we could do to reduce costs that don't have a revenue line associated with it. I had a bunch of facility use agreements on the docket for this month's meeting. That includes the farmer's market, which is expired, which will need to be reviewed. That includes our mobile food vendor at Ahuska. That includes adult softball, that includes home talent baseball. So all of those facility agreements would be introduced with, you know, significant fee increases to be able to cover some of the costs associated with having them. So right now, many of these organizations that use our facilities are somewhat subsidized because it's for the greater good of the community or it's for longstanding partnerships that we've had and for things that we, you know, haven't been able to put on ourselves. So I didn't want to sound doom and gloom or sound the alarm, but at this point, absence of I'm not confident that the staff composition as it stands today will be here in 6 months. And so I'm not committing to anything outside of what we're currently doing or revenue producing activities that we have in the department, because the temperature of city staff in general is tense about where this leads and how we can continue to offer the services and what, you know, that scenario would look like just from a morale perspective. And that's just the ability of, like, if we're talking half my staff leaves and I have to now try to recruit and train, then, you know, we're talking about just not doing the things that we typically have done. And so there are like things that I won't be considering because they're producing revenue and help offset the bottom line. Everything else, I think, you know, we've talked about. And I'll just say this because I live here too. We are very lucky to have what we have from around the departments, but the cost is high at a lot of times. It's at the expense of people working long hours and making it happen. And we have real issues with people and the wages and the ability to pay their bills and to make things happen. And so while we all benefit from the services that we have, there are some things that are considered luxury. You know, like we don't have to have trash cans at every single park. We can go without and we don't have to have, you know, continuous cleaning or, you know, update. We don't have to do shelter rentals because the cost that, you know, that's a loss leader. The revenue we get from shelter rentals doesn't equate into, you know, we spend on janitorial supplies and cleaning of the buildings, etc., or facilitating, you know, the permit fees for facilitating special events. Like those are time sucks for us of dealing with the number of organizations and the events and what that actually looks like from a fee schedule. And the fees only help so much, because if I don't have extra staff, Like it doesn't, some of it's like, doesn't matter what money we're getting because the staff that we have, that the core staff, it's like the time. It just doesn't work. So like sometimes we just can't pay our way out of it. In one aspect, and so we structurally have to look at. What we continue to do from a department and what the mission of our department is and what the community demands out of us. But we also have to look at what these realistic scenarios look like. And so I just wanted this board to kind of understand, at least if you want to do that. And implement that type of a budget, and I say I can reduce our staff by, that's what it means, like, so significant, like, you'll notice, from a parks perspective. From a rec perspective, you know, the fees that we charge offset the expenditures that we have for both the full-time and part-time, so the rec programs that we have, the services that we offer would remain relatively the same regardless of the outcome of the election. Other than if we have significant staff changeover, that may impact, you know, future delivery of services if we just don't have the people to be able to fill roles once they've left. Or the fees would substantially have to, you know, we can raise fees and implement higher wages for seasonal staff through our department, but there gets to be a level of the seasonals are making more per hour than the full-time staff. Or so, you know, like, well, why would I do that when I make more money working as an hourly employee, so that there's this cascading effect of what we have to look for. So I'm open to other suggestions if people have it, but when this comes up or we're talking in the community about what does that actually mean, this is kind of what it means, you know, from what the list was. I believe, and Doug and Patrick can expand upon what the next council meeting would look like. I think it's a staff proposal, maybe of a more detailed view of the cuts, but I wasn't at the meeting, but.
Yeah, I think basically that Neil is gonna
Drill down a little bit.
drill down more details, and also to have like the overall number for us, like how big is the hole? You know, because we will, if it doesn't pass, I expect that we would implement wheel tax and a garbage collection. But that only gets, you know,
That just buys us time.
and that doesn't fill the whole gap of inflation that's happening for us.
That just, you know, it probably buys us 2 years.
Yeah, it doesn't even buy us all of 1 year.
Well, I think, well, it depends on what we want to do with other things and fund balance and whatever, but
Right.
either way, it's not a solution.
Right.
Is there any way before the election, and this is beyond our parks board, but I know we got the flyers in the mail and it touches upon like maybe 3 or 4 bullet points of what these potential cuts could mean in real life, but like you even giving like a testimonial and posting out like you just gave to us about the detailed things that this would really, or sending around something like what's in the agenda book that really shows people, you know, detailed descriptions of what this truly means, yeah. I don't think the public like fully understands
You know,
implication.
and we have to be cognizant of the fact that we can't lobby for, at least as a city and as elected officials, we can't lobby in our official capacities one way or another with the referendum. We can talk about factual information, but we do have to be careful about that. What we talked about at our last city council meeting, at least at the end anyway, was, you know, asking some. Like with the library, right? There was some talk about, why can't the library just have all volunteers, right? So I talked to Ryan about that at the meeting to explain what would happen if the library had all volunteers, right? So maybe at our next city council meeting, Jake, if you or Missy would be willing to come in at the end for 10 minutes and talk, you could even do it remotely. And we have a question for you, like about this, and you can talk about it for 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah,
And I guess getting to what Rachel is asking, am I understanding what you maybe started saying, Jake? And I guess what I was hearing is even if the referendum passes, we have some changes that need to be made.
Correct. I don't think as draconian as this, but I will be looking at, you know, the referendum passing, which includes non-personnel revenue or income to be able to use for contracted services. So like that would potentially reduce some of the pressure on our staff to try to maintain facilities to a standard. So that would look like our Woodland Park Management Plan that can't be funded out of capital, could be funded out of the operating. Maintenance of Grand Crossing Park, the same standard as the private development next door could look like that. Lattice Park, you know, the boat launch facility has rain gardens that are supposed to be serving a purpose and have monitored that they're not because of the way that, you know, like there's a stormwater management function that we cannot comply with because of the amount of plants and that, you know, where things are at and priority too. We also have to look at that. That's the job. My job is where people have a hard time understanding why the windscreens don't get put up right away, why things don't happen at San Damiano at the snap of a finger, because I have to prioritize every single day with the hours that we have available, knowing what your schedule looks like and what has to get done, because, you know, the pool is a big, like, for me, it's one of the most important things we do, is that we have this public swimming pool available for our community and our swim team and our, you know, like swim lessons, learn swim program, and it affects a lot of people generationally. You know, the ability to have our public restrooms available, I think is a big opportunity, you know, is a major thing that we can offer. We have a lot of public restrooms in parks for a community our size. We have a lot of play spaces, playgrounds that, you know, need to be maintained and have the correct, you know, surfacing. So some of the things that we can do, what I call in-house, where we self-perform some of those things, could be contracted out moving forward, and that could put some temporary relief on, you know, what we have for available, you know, staff hours. I think just kind of pragmatically, we should be looking at, you know, a closer look at our facility use agreements and what that actually means, and are we putting more onus on the groups that are using our facilities and cost sharing a little bit more, and not only an annual basis, but also future improvements. And so like one of the things that I think the message is loud and clear to me this year with the capital budget moving forward is I am tasked with looking at different forms of revenue for park improvement projects. So we're very grateful to get capital borrowing for this path project, but the mayoral capital budget decreased 90% of our requests. And so it is, and I don't see that improving in the next 5 years with the amount of bigger challenges that we have. And so we continue to try to be the face of Monona and offer the services and facilities that we have. But the reality is that while we've been very successful, I think in the last 15 to 20 years in funding some improvements, we still have lots of things that will be needed to be replaced or improved. And at this point, I'm not confident that we'll be receiving much city funding at all. And so we have to look at how we can start to brand that to the community and look at, you know, funding sources that we haven't had to rely on before, because I think we've all been pretty fortunate, like, well, we just need a new playground and we're going to get the funding from, you know, the capital improvement project program, and we pass it here at Parks Board, and then it goes to the council, and there may or may not be appetite, you know, to support that given the other priorities that we have as a city. And so that is another concern that I have about how we start to plan from a Parks and Rec perspective, and where the funding is going to be at for long-term improvements. And certainly, you know, this central park is really key in that, and what we can do and where the people have the most access to. And so we look at that, at least from my seat of like, where is our biggest, best bang for our buck? What facility has the most amount of people that can get to it, use it the most, and have access, you know, to it. And so we have to look at that too, and so that, but that also then takes like, we can do that, that becomes now my full-time job, you know, I'm now a fundraiser, I'm now looking at developing those partnerships and how we can. Look at other sources of revenue, and we just don't have necessarily the hours or the available staff to do that because of kind of whatever is next is fire to put out for that day. So those are kind of the two areas at least that I'm looking at, trying to prep this board for. Is we've got a lot that will be coming before this board in the next, you know. Post-November election, I think decisions that will be kind of made post election and then pre-budget passing, so it's gonna be pretty quick.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, that's why, you know. Worked up several different scenarios for it, but, yeah, I think we really have to get it passed before December 1. In order to have enough time to get everything processed for tax bills, and that's it's kind of late, I think, probably the second meeting in November. It's usually what we shoot for.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
That
right.
might be a little, we might have to have a special meeting. I was gonna add on the capital budget that. What the budgets that the mayor's proposing, we've mostly adopted over the last number of years, have been trying to. Keep the general obligation borrowing around 3 million. You can give or take a couple $100,000 one way or the other. This year it's at 3.5. And that was, was 3 really big expensive projects, and that's one thing we're finding is that stuff is just gotten. So much more expensive that the library roof, which we're putting off, is like $1.25 million. The public works roof building envelope is about the same. And we are gonna do that next year. And then kind of off the trail, which has already been put off twice, it's been put off one more year. And that was like 2, I mean, if you count the utilities, it's 2.5, you know, $1.5 million for general obligation. So I think. The chance that we're gonna get a big park project certainly in the next 3 years is. Probably not too good.
Right.
After that, you know, we'll see.
So just to touch on that, one of the things we do have coming in, which is positive, negative stuff. We have started seeing the flow of impact fees coming in for the apartment complexes that have been approved and under construction. So once the apartment complexes that are going up or have like their building permit, that's when the impact fees are due. So I believe we're at about 350,000 right now. In the bank, and if the Owen Road development gets approved, that'll be another 150 or 200,000 give or take. But the important thing for us, and I think we are hoping, I'm asking for a potential budget amendment to the capital that we've not talked about because it falls over multiple committees, is that we have to review the fees that we assess developers for impact fees of parkland, and it's not just picking a number out of a hat. So we're at like $1,700 a unit ish, and that has like an inflation escalator in it. And because we're landlocked and we have less opportunities to continue to add these multifamily housing developments, which don't offer green space, you know, no apartment complex in Monona is going to have green space attached to it for a new park. I shouldn't say that, but most likely not. And so that amount of space is limited, but what that money does allow us to do is to fund these capital projects, improvements in our existing parks. And so the fees across the county vary. There's like there's several firms that come up with the formulas in which would identify, you know, values and costs to maintain and operate your facilities. And that can get you a number of what we can start to charge the developers per unit. Whether that becomes a significant barrier in developing in Monona, I highly doubt it. You know, we're one of the lowest in the county right now. We should be higher. We should probably be the highest, if you're asking my personal opinion, on those impact fees, because we do have great parks. And the more and more people we do have, building, whether it's in Monona or around Monona, we see the pressure that gets put on the park, especially from a multi-family perspective, because have the backyards. And so you're utilizing our park spaces. And so that's a tool or a financial tool that's being used heavily around the county. So when you see a lot of, there's massive park projects happening around Dane County right now, and some really cool things. Well, the vast majority of that money is impact fee driven in some of these other suburban areas or, fundraiser. And quite frankly, I don't believe we have the capacity, certainly not as a department where we'd have to have an establishment of a Parks Foundation. Either specifically for Winnebago Park or for our general park system as a whole, that we have not seen the level of success of those for large scale, talking multi-million-dollar projects without kind of an angel donor or something that's specifically gifting a set amount of money for that. So where you're seeing the big park projects, and we're talking $1 million playgrounds, are these inclusive playgrounds. And so you're seeing those pop up, but they are about $1 million. So when we talk about what it costs to replace the Dream Park playground, for example, it's going to be 750 million. And that's not to get like the greatest playground in the world. It's just everything costs more. And to be able to do that, certainly with the priorities we have, we're not going to see that. So we have to look at, what's realistic, and then maybe for us as a committee, really allowing priorities of what, realistic priorities. So it's hard because like I think our 5-year plan has turned into 10-year, 15-year for some facilities. So, when does Ohuska Park ever get the love that it needs and attention it deserves for accessibility? And, I think we'll see at least initial impacts that I've had and feedback on this path have been tremendously positive. And, like people do use our parks and they, support the ability for all ages and mobilities to use our parks, but it's expensive, it's $1 million for a mile of paths. You got a third of a mile of a path and kind of track right on that. So you're talking about extending that, further down to Winnebago Park or playground replacement or, court replacement or repairs, like all of these costs add up. And we just end up where we are today with our facilities and deferred maintenance. And now these costs to maintain what our existing facilities are higher because we didn't address them sooner. So we have to be pretty strategic, I think, moving forward in the next couple of budgets of what is actual priority and what the opportunity costs of not doing something like this.
Just one comment on the changing the formula or the amount that we get per unit. That's not really a budget, wouldn't be part of the budget, but I think it is something, and I know it's complicated. I talked to Bill Cole about it before. Yeah, you're right. It's not as simple as you can't just back of the envelope, but either you gotta have with your
The data
you
and
gotta, data to back it up. But that's something maybe that we could start a discussion. Actually, I think in finance, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, it could start here, but really, it's just, it's a matter of it's going to money.
right of having a firm, because there's a report that's done and it's probably not something we can self-perform. At least the ones that I've seen that are indicating that, so.
But yeah, I mean, get the discussion started and.
Right, yeah, because it's kind of like when do you stop that? It seems like we're always in the process of some new development coming on
Right.
board and. What those negotiations look like with the anticipated, impact fees, might be, so. At some point, we either have to say, no new budget, no new negotiations on, development until we pass this, ordinance with the fee schedule, or. Sorry, this year's budget includes an increase of what we had originally told you might be based on the funding formula.
Yeah, so anyway, to get back to the budget cuts, I don't know. I guess maybe to try to respond to your question, Rachel, but I mean, so the city's effort so far has been out 2 mailers, there's another one coming out soon. They just finished a really nice 2.5-3 minute video that Neil, the administrator, and Mary did on Facebook. Yeah, public information meetings, we've got one more of those coming up on the 23rd. And then there's, there are. I don't want to get into this too far because we're in the meeting, but what there is, there are some private individual efforts to try to spread the word and kind of be more be advocates for it rather than just city has to be factual. I think the prohibition is actually you can't spend public funds to promote a referendum. So, and that's, I think people have kind of taken that and blown it up into something broader than it is, but. So. Anybody have any more? questions, comments?
I think, what you were saying, Rachel, is there a way of maybe, you've got a list of people who use the parks, people who sign up for programs, could that list of people or just on the rec website be something where, you can share, if we stop, picking up the garbage in the parks, it's this amount of savings and, the special events, if those are eliminated, it's these types of savings. But probably prefacing it to, this is what we have to probably do anyways, because the budget or if the referendum passes, you're still gonna be in a bind with staffing or, you don't have people working the weekends. And you shouldn't be working the weekends. Is there kind of a venue that, is kind of a group of people who use the rec programs and parks?
Well. I mean, the city, it's, could push out, I mean, we're already doing push notifications on the information that's out there. I'd be pretty hesitant for an individual advocating on their own to obtain that list. I mean, I guess I think the public record was, but I think it'd be cleaner to not want to keep private effort and city effort separate as much as can. I guess to be honest, I'm a little hesitant to push, but I know that I think it might be a little confusing or conflicting information. Like we're gonna have cuts in the parks anyway, even if you pass this, which may very well be the case. They'll be much worse if we don't pass it. But and I think frankly, I've been kind of surprised and a little frustrated that people don't seem that interested for the most part, either way.
I was surprised at how few people were at the public session.
Right.
I don't know, what was it, 2 weeks ago? How do you get people to come and to really learn rather than the rumor, get information from the rumor?
That's what I'm
that's
saying,
probably not accurate.
somehow publicizing these very specific things, like, we have to get rid of garbage can, I mean. For all the dog walkers out there, I don't know if like
Right.
these specifics are getting through to people, like.
Right.
In the
So-
flyer, like I said, there were like 3 bullets maybe saying how this might impact you, but. These are like real things, when I see these, it's like, wow, this really is going to change.
Can't remember if the third mailing is going to be more specific on that. I mean, I think it's pretty much in the can where you go, so.
And obviously, it's not just the specifics of the Parks and Rec Department.
Right, the whole thing, right, yeah.
I think that the challenge has been, staff has been asking for. Some sort of direction from council about making a resolution that would say we are implementing. The compensation plan regardless of the outcome of the referendum. If there was a resolution and intent, we could then. Be directed by the mayor and council. To provide what that actually means, because right now, we just everyone's providing, you know, there was. 3 budgets, everyone had to kind of comply with what that narrative looks like, but without. You know, kind of a commitment from the council. The council very well could just say, you know, the referendum failed and we will be just implementing wheel tax to get a 1-year kind of, you know. Band-aid, so to speak, to get through a budget season, and the expectations is that the services that we currently have will still remain. Now, that's. Kind of. Hedging your bets that you don't have staff turnover. You know, like if you're not implementing a compensation plan and no staff leaves, then maybe you would see limited, you know. Things might not look that much different if we're just kind of, you know, paying our way out of it. But without direction, like really it's, we need some sort of direction or some commitment from the council. In my opinion, as the staff and resident, well, I think I've heard that consistently. But what are we going to not get if this fails? And the reality is we can't say anything right now because we have not had that as an agenda item, at least to discuss or to approve anything, whether the council can change their mind after, you know, like they can always do it, but it is kind of a difficult discussion. So we put things out in kind of general sense. We've all put dollar amounts of what things cost to the city and what this would look, because it's not like, it's not equitable necessarily say like 5% budget reduction on the police department, which is, let's say, a $3 million budget versus the senior center, which is a $50,000 budget, you know, like that doesn't necessarily work kind of in logistics and reality. And so you have to start seeing, well, what are these reductions in service and cuts, you know, like which one of these do we do, you know, are we committed to if we were to say we're implementing a compensation plan for a majority of the staff. And so I think that's, at least from my perspective, hard to say, of saying like, well, if this is what I'm directed to do, let's just say you need to cut $50,000 to $70,000 out of one of your budgets. Well, that is what it actually means. Now, if it's saying, sorry, you know, the referendum failed, no one's getting compensation plan implemented, the budget's passed, assuming that you're not going to have a mutiny of staff leaving or whatever, then we just try to go on as we normally would, but we would still have to have some potential structural changes, at least to what we do to accommodate that. So the council's in a tough spot, because I think it's hard to say we're committing to this regardless, and then you're also now talking about having to have difficult conversations with staff about whose position is going to be eliminated and what services, you know, like, well, it's not hard to start to decide, well, am I out there, you know, right? Everyone's got to do what's best for their family and themselves professionally, but you don't want to necessarily put that fear in right away, you know, like it's right. Everyone's in a difficult position.
And it's gonna be that way for the next 3 weeks.
Right.
And, you know, I think the mayor has made it really clear that, to me, she's going to propose, I'm confident, a budget that either way, if it fails, that will do the compensation package. And I haven't heard anybody in the council say they wouldn't be in favor of that. You know, the problem is until we get the actual numbers in front of us and know for sure, we can't really say for sure. But yeah, to me, we have to do that. Otherwise, I think there will be. We had 22% turnover last year. I don't think it's going to have that this year. But yeah, I think some people are kind of holding on to see what happens with the referendum. If it fails, they may not even wait around to see if we get compensation. You know, right. So.
Question about the turnover, with the 22% turnover. Have those positions all been refilled, new people hired, or people left and leaving?
A lot of those are public works, so they've been refilled. Public works is back up to its normal strength, but that's also less experienced workers than what we had.
Usually for more than what the person who left. was.
And then there's the training cost, which is part of that too. So it just costs us more in the long run.
Yeah, I think most of them have been filled. Yeah, there've been some in PD, there's at least one open in PD. Right now, there've been some openings and fires.
That one is budgeted though, to replace the one in PD.
Oh, right, yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I think they were all eventually filled.
Yeah.
And then that kind of creates this thing where if it's, as long as it's not filled, when you're not spending that money, that's the only way really, then we're able to, pay the new person, whatever the market is demanding, even though they have thought they're gonna have homes for sure, less experience and less training. So. Really hope not.
Not fun.
No.
Not growing, you're slowing, right? Yeah, I feel like we are in limbo right now to the election and. To your point, I think all we can do is more of a grassroots effort and get the word out there, get the vote out there. Educate people, I know. In my traveling through club soccer right now, people are appalled when there's not a washroom available for these kids that are out there playing their hearts out. I was in Oregon, I was at the forest, I was on the north side of Madison, and it's shocking. It's almost like the sense of entitlement, but maybe that's what people need to wake up and realize that these things come with a price.
They do.
So can we just personally share? this with people?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We're allowed to do that.
Yeah, it's a public document. so.
Yeah, it's encouraged actually.
Yeah, I think that's. Part of the hope is, the word is kind of spreading and that people can, spread that information further and. And get it out, get good information out there, because, I mean, if somebody looks at it and feels like I just can't pay that, then, that's understandable why, why they were voting against it, this one, to have a good picture of what the reality is. I like to remind everybody that Patrick and I and the rest of the council, we're all gonna be paying higher taxes too, so. It's like, we're not really looking forward to it.
No, but. I mean, there's only so many resources available,
Right.
but. And the demand of services outstrips our ability to provide those resources.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel, fairly out of the state, but. Yeah, that's based on not a whole lot of data, just kind of history of how Monona has voted on stuff before, when it's been asked to step up, for the community. So. Anyway, anything else on this?
Just thought the recent article kind of educating people on how unique Monona is, and we're not alone,
Oh, business.
yeah, compared to other communities, but we are trying to come up with positive solutions, and I still think. That's just the tipping point of the trickle down effect and all that development and the impacts that it has, but at least shows that we are looking to, find other revenue sources and development plans and, make it better. Right.
Okay,
Just a question, are people in trying to understand this whole process? Confused at all with what's going on with the school district and or
Oh, yeah.
and how,
A lot of people think we're the school district, believe it or not,
okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah. I mean, the mayor has received multiple correspondence about why would you let this happen with the school district budget? Well, we don't manage the school district budget, so.
we did, there is a little blurb in the second banner about that. It's, I'd say we've got, there's maybe some confusion over that again, though, there doesn't, people don't seem to be that upset about that either. I don't know,
There are definitely some, yes.
right? You know, I don't know if it's like the death of local news, so people just, it's hard to, you know. To get good quality information about local schools.
No, people rely on social media, and then there's a lot of disinformation about there on social media about it right now. There's people every day posting stuff about how the city is completely irresponsible with finances. You know, it's the same small group of people that continually do that, but it's
Yeah, I didn't say it's,
yeah,
it's the usual suspects.
yeah, but you know. The social media algorithms are kind of geared towards those posts that are the most outrageous get the most play, you know, so that's what people see the most of.
That in mind, the next time I post something about the budget, include, I don't know, what, something.
Yes, yeah.
All right, any director's report?
Yeah, it's just a couple things. The path project is moving closer and closer to completion, so they're in final restoration work. Got some concrete work to do yet around the building. But as far as the path has been paved and it's usable, which is great. Is if you get a chance this week and next week, we still have our youth sports programs happening in the evenings, and so to kind of see it in action and kind of some of people.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
It's
using,
amazing.
you know, I think the feedback has been very positive. And so that is great, and I think just the way we've kind of programmed in that part of the park.
Yeah.
Makes it really convenient to kind of use that path, and it's like, yeah, wherever we put a path, people use.
Yeah, it's just needed
It's just right, I mean, I think it blends in perfectly with the park, and so we're happy. We'll actually be meeting, we're gonna take out a group of seniors next week and kind of look at. You know, where would a resting spot be, and you know, like,
Oh,
just
yeah.
to get their perspective on things, and so the Schaefer Shelter project will be out for a design build. In the next month, we assume that it will go to get feedback from the facilities committee, with hopefully a remodel over the winter time, but certainly before like May 1st. And so that will include 88 bathrooms, renovation and upgrade of the electrical and the siding and roof. With the intent that we would be serving concessions. As a revenue generator 4 nights a week with how we program out there in May, September, so. Including, you know, like, again, when I say service, we talk about what are some of the things that we do, revenue generators, having tournaments. Out there, we did a wiffle ball tournament, a no school wiffle ball, like wiffle ball is like the 7 to 12-year-old like sport right now in the summertime, and we'll be doing like a Dane County to get 60 to 70 teams in all day and that sort of stuff. So we're planning a couple of 2025 scenarios, which is like, well, hopefully we'll be able to do this. The fall festival is Saturday and the Google Hustle, so we're at almost record registrations, pre-registrations for the run part of it. We're at 444 right now, and so we're hoping to get over 500 for the run, and then that leads us into our biggest park and rec event that we have of the year. Weather looks great, so come on out if you'd like to help out. We certainly will take help in different areas. That's this Saturday. The race, I believe, starts at 9, and then festival activities will be after that. So our staff is busy with that. We were able to host a Ho-Chunk event at Huska Park on last Saturday, a powwow, and I think it was well attended. It was open to the public. So we had kind of coordination with several Ho-Chunk elected officials, and then their event planner. They used the main football fields for the base of it, and it was kind of an all day. So very interesting from kind of what we had talked about with our relationship with Ho-Chunk Nation, is the ability to practice cultural practices on property. And I would say of all of the special events that we've had this year, they were by far the best at the lead no trace. I had a staff sickness this weekend, so I was in on Sunday thinking, yeah, it's gonna be a big cleanup day. And you know, we do require dumpsters out of these events, but like literally every trash can in the entire park, not only just in their area, was empty and it was left cleaner than what we got. So we, from our perspective anyway, from multiple aspects, it was a wonderful program to have. And we just keep, you know, rolling with everything else that we do. So we're kind of finishing up fall rec programs, the outdoor activities. We will start indoor. We have some better kind of use of me with school now. The after school program has been a very busy start of this, the school year. Staff adjustments and kind of how the building works and how it is utilized and how we can open that up to general public programs in the fall and winter. And so those are still ongoing, but we anticipate potentially some indoor pickleball opportunities at Maywood this winter, amongst other things.
Okay.
So segment, one of the news stations about the memorial tree planting.
Oh,
area.
yeah, sorry. Yeah, so that was an event for to acknowledge pregnancy loss and infant loss awareness day, which is nationally on October 5th. And so the organization that we've been working with, is interviewed Felicia from Healing Our Hearts. We've had a very positive collaboration with having funding of memorial benches and trees throughout the park. And so they had that event. And so, yeah, it was nice to see that as publicity. And we were close to maybe $20,000 of donations from that organization for trees and benches in the park. And so that serves as another opportunity for people to get to experience the park in a different way as well.
A beautiful setting.
Yeah.
And they have some signs up for some of it, also with some ribbons on some of the trees and nice idea to connect up with them.
Yes. They found us and said we were much easier to work with than the city of Madison, which is a common thing for just about everything that we do.
Yeah. Said we should print t-shirts, Monona, nice people.
I just like the word Monona, we're not Madison.
Yeah.
We're not mad.
No offense.
All right,
The city of Madison.
please, any other questions for Drake?
One, actually, just because I started doing this at the council meeting, so I'll do it now, since people, one of the questions that constituents have asked is, how come we can't consolidate some of our management with other municipalities? So, like, for instance, as the director of parks and rec, how, or in your opinion, why would that not be, why would it be or not be feasible? Like, let's say, combine the position with McFarland and Cottage Grove,
Oh,
you know?
well, yeah, that would be a lot of work for one person. And, you know, I think one of the things that this community benefits me living here, as long as I have with Missy, is you have a pretty good pulse on the community. Now, if we were in Illinois and we had a legislator that was, we would be able to create park districts, which could cross jurisdictional municipal boundaries and have operational. So it has not been done in Wisconsin because you have some of the same challenges you might have with what we have with kind of a co-op position with a school district and how much time is allocated to one municipality versus another. And you're gonna have governmental, you know, like, why is that person always in there? We're paying a third of their salary, or you're having that. So, you know, for parks, park districts make a ton of sense, and which could cross municipal boundaries. So like, we could have a park district that would take on, let's say, parks from Monona Drive to Stoughton Road. And it's a separate taxing entity. So my dream of someday, I would love to see park districts in Wisconsin. That's
Something the legislature has to do.
correct. It's not obligated. Now, co-op, at least in my experience, is very tricky because of just the time allotment for organization. And I think what we're really good at is having an expertise of what happens in Monona. And maybe that's different of what works in Monona, may not work in McFarland, or may not work in Pittsburgh.
Are you familiar with like a co-op situation that exists in Wisconsin like that?
No, I mean, there have been some that are, like Will Nimal's position, which is split between the school district and the municipality in serving in some of that, but as far as like Parks and Rec, no. It's very independent, and the workload generally is enough for each municipality to handle within.
And I think people need to hear too, that you're a working parks director, you know, you're not sitting behind a desk all day. You're operating equipment, you're mowing lawns, you're doing all of these things in addition to administering.
Correct, which is not ideally what we'd like to have.
Yeah.
Any of our positions, but if you look at our police chief is out on calls, our fire chief is out on calls, our. You know, myself, then there's a couple people in Dane County that do it, but a lot of them are able to direct and lead, and it's hard to lead sometimes when you're out doing whatever, like this. Next on fire, so it's something that I enjoy doing at times, but I think whether I'm here or there's someone else in the position, it's not sustainable. And I do think these positions, city positions in Monona are really valuable to what we have to the residents of Monona. And I also have a lot of skin in the game because I live here and I am raising my kids here, so there is also that part of it that, and we have, you know, multiple people even in my department that are doing the same, so. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Any opposed, we're adjourned.